I was super hesitant to make today's episode. Number one, because my core values are something that I hold dear to myself, and I know that it's very customized for me, and I don't want people to try to copy what I'm doing without deeply searching within themselves. At the same time, one of the things that I constantly try to bounce back and forth on is burnout. Burnout is not a delicate topic. It's not a simple topic to tackle. However, there are a lot of things that I see, especially in the online world, that people diagnose as burnout. It's not really burnout. And I think there's a lot of people that have a misunderstanding of what burnout is. And I'm not a mental health expert. I don't pretend to be one. But I do have a very specific definition that was taught to me by a former mentor of what burnout is. And when you look at it that way, it really shifts what you're doing in ministry, how you treat it, and even how to diagnose what burnout is. And so I kind of did some back and forth on, do I want to tackle this from the motivation fuel aspect of what values are supposed to do for you and how they keep you aligned? Or do I tackle this from the burnout aspect of this is really how to avoid burnout? In the end, in my constant effort to a fault, not be a stumbling block, I ended up titling this how I stay fueled in ministry. Because I wanted to be sure that this is not instructional, this is not prescriptional, so to speak. This is just me sharing how I try to live my life, and I say try because I'm not perfect, but also so many people tell me, and I don't feel this way, but so many people tell me, hey, how do you do this? How do you do it that fast? How do you stay that focused? How do you keep going in spite of every setback that you've ever had, especially in the last year, a lot of setbacks personally and family and financially and business-wise, not where I want it to be. But I still keep going. I don't call it a grind. I do call it a little bit of a hustle in my own business, but also in my ministry. How do you do all this? And I know last week I said I was going to talk about follow-up, and we'll definitely talk about that next week. But I wanted to share this because this is super, I don't know, I just felt heavy on my heart. And this is a talk that I want to share with more people in ministry, not so much pastors, but more the church communicators, the volunteers, the lay leaders. This is not so much marketing related, but if you do have that outrageous vision of being the best known, you're going to hit a lot of obstacles. And the best way to tackle them is to come from the proper value place, not just in the church, but also you as a church leader. And then also knowing where to go. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So enough of me rambling. Let's get into how I stay fueled in ministry. And this week's value really is unreasonable faith. We have unreasonable faith in a God that died and rose again and chooses to co-author, I always say this a lot, chooses to co-author his redemption story with us. And so have a little bit of unreasonable faith with me as we tackle this. I hope it's inspirational. If not, hey, at least I tried. But let's get into it. I think this will be a good one.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show, where we show you how to 10x your reach with church marketing that will help you increase your impact, make more disciples, and become the cornerstone of your community again. This is for the leaders with an outrageous vision, because anything less would be an inaccurate reflection of our Creator. The ones who have unreasonable faith, because you know God works unreasonable miracles. And the ones who are relentless in the pursuit of your calling, because anything less would not make a good and faithful servant. If that's you, you're in the right place. Now, please welcome your host and guide on this journey to become the best known organization in your community, Justin Nava.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show, where we help you take your church from unknown to best known, from irrelevant to relevant, from completely out of people's mind, out of sight, to being known like the local Walmart. People know where you are, when you're open, and what to expect when they connect with you. Today, we're taking a little bit of a shift because I want to make sure you as a leader are properly you have the proper mindset, you're properly founded not only on biblical principles, spiritual disciplines, but also just what it takes to lead a ministry. There's a little bit more when you're a ministry leader, which we're all supposed to be ministry leaders, right? But if you're in an organizational ministry leadership capacity where you have accountability, not only missionally and if you're a pastor, your flock that you're accountable to, but you also have like just flat out work and tasks and administration that you're accountable for, and it can all pile on. And it's very easy, especially for me, I don't know if you're like me, to just want to shut down for a few days. And how do you come back for that? How do you make sure that if you shut down, you're able to turn back on? Because I don't know if it's possible to completely avoid a shutdown. I think you do have to shut down, but it should be voluntary, right? And so what I want to share with you today, I hope it's going to be some sort of inspiration, some sort of like, hey, okay, I'm not the only one that feels like I'm needing this. This really changed my life, my ministry, my business. And so I wanted to share with you my core values, the 10 core values. This is a message that I have that I really wanted to share last year from the stage at conferences. There was a few conferences I was like, this audience needs to know this. But they really wanted me to speak on marketing. So I did that. And I'm hoping this year I get to share this a little bit more. But I wanted to provide an introduction to this, how I stay fueled in ministry, even with insane goals and actions. And by the way, churches have insane goals and action. You want to change your community. You want to get people to believe in the God that created them, that they hate, that they have sinned against. And not only that, you want to transform them through Christ to impact your community, to grow the kingdom. And by the way, you're not selling anything. You're relying purely on, from a business administration standpoint, the generosity of others. That's pretty outrageous. That's pretty insane. So when it comes down to the thick of it, how do you stay on task, stay accountable to yourself? And much like our church has values, every church probably has, your church probably has core values or missional values. You need to have your own set of personal values. We have church values or organizational values because it shows what's important to us, and we kind of look at what we're doing and say, does this align with our values? It should always align with your mission. It should align with the vision you want to see happen, and then it should align with your values. These are the things that are core to us, right? If money as a church is not a core value, it's not let's make as much profit as possible. So obviously, if someone comes in and says, hey, let's make some money, you're like, this isn't our value. This isn't us, right? This is not us just because we decided. It's because we have a value of ministry, okay? And so, terrible explanation. But we have core values as a church because that kind of determines the direction we're going to go, right? And that's kind of where the thumbnail of this came from, is from a former mentor, Jason, would say and I don't know, he probably got it from somewhere too. Values are the compass that drive the direction of our life, okay? You have to know where you're going to go and how you're going to get there, and your values determine that, okay? And one of the things that we did, and this is one of the oldest things in my office, you'll notice I got stuff hanging behind me now if you're watching the video. I'm still in the process of getting the office set up, so it's like, I don't think that's straight. You can still see my printer. I got a monopod that rolls, so I can try to get some different angles for different videos. But you'll see why I went ahead and did this live anyways, even though everything's not done. But I'm always changing things. I got a new poster here. You can't see, it's off screen. I'm always changing things, but one of the oldest things in my office, besides myself, is this index card. And this index card, you'll see, is titled My Values. I made this card 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021. I don't know. It's several years old. And on the back are 10 things that I decided were my value. Actually, there's 12, but I crossed out 2 of them because I realized they weren't really driving the direction. They weren't driving my decisions. And every morning I look at this index card and I repeat it back to myself to kind of center myself after I read the Bible. I feel like I have to say that. But if you keep these values core to yourself, like I do myself, and you don't have to come up with 10, you can come up with 3. That's fine. Like our business has 6 values: the outrageous, unreasonable, relentless, thinking, faith, and pursuit. Vision, actions, execution. Okay, those are our 6 values. But I have 10. I don't know why 10. I don't remember if Jason told me that, or if I felt like that was a good number, or if it's just that's how much room I had. But I want to share these with you. Maybe you can take a couple of them and just share a little bit about how this helps me keep going in ministry and in my crazy life. But again, if you take nothing else away from this, it's values drive the decisions that drive the direction of your ministry. And your church has values. You as a leader should have your own set of values. Okay. Now I have 10 and I have them they're not so much in order. The first 3 are, and this is where I get a lot of trouble and this is where I'm hesitant. So I apologize if I stutter and mumble a lot, but the first value, the most important core value. All right. Here's where everyone's like, it's not Jesus. You're stupid. You're going to hell. The first core value is family first. Okay. I've made the mistake of putting ministry before family. And yes, discipleship, worship, glorifying God, and all that stuff needs to come first. However, I am not glorifying God if I sacrifice my family in the process. I have duties as a husband. I have duties as a father. I need to make sure that I address those first. Okay. And if I sacrifice my family in the pursuit of this other things, I think that's a bad witness. So number 1 core value is always family first. Number 2, I mean, it's a very close number 2. I actually adopted this. This used to be be a good witness, but now it's follow me until you see Jesus. I think that's something that Crosswaves Church really repeated a lot. And I was like, that just makes a lot of sense. And so not only just be a good witness, not only just say the right things, not only just do the right things, but just be an image of Christ to where when people follow you, they naturally come to Jesus. They naturally see Jesus. And again, part of that is like, dude, like I'm following you and you're just so bad about maintaining and leading your family. So that's why the family part comes first. Number 3, commit now and figure out the rest later. This one I picked up, I know it was in 2020. I took out a $15,000 business loan and I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to pay this back. I could barely pay myself in 2020 until things kind of took off at the other half of the year. But I had no idea what was going to happen. It was the first big loan besides my student loans that I took out. I was surprised I even qualified. But one thing that kept coming back is commit now, figure out the rest later. And that's had zero negative impact like I feared it might have. But I knew that it would propel me forward. I knew that, thankfully, God's timing, it got me through a little bit of a weird time because that was before 2020 really hit, if you know what I mean. And then also, just like, all right, let's make a decision and let's follow it through, right? I think so often, especially in ministry, we get tied down and bogged down in, I got to make sure I have all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted. And essentially we make an idol out of our systems and processes rather than the results that we want to have come out of it. So I always look at, what do I want to see happen? What's the best way to get there? And let's go ahead and make the decision to do it. And then we'll figure out how to do it later. Because otherwise we'll just keep kicking the can down the road. And a lot of churches, this is why they stagnate. This is why they stagnate, is because they're trying to figure things out before they actually take action. It's kind of like when you're talking to someone, it's like, yeah, I'm going to go to church, but I need to get my life together first. Right? And we use that analogy. Well, I'd go to the hospital, but I'm going to wait for my sickness to go away first. Like, nah, dude. Right? So, take the leap of faith and commit now. Figure the rest out later. Number 4 comes back to a little bit of I am fond of the philosophy of Stoicism. I don't practice it like a lot of other people might, especially because it does step over the line compared to some of the things that Jesus calls us to do. But I think this is very important for our mental health in ministry. And I think church communicators especially need to learn this. Core value number 4, don't bend the knee unless it's my desire. There were times I left the church in tears because I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't fight for something that I knew should happen in my ministry. I let myself get trampled over. And again, I'm not saying that they trampled over me. I'm saying I let myself get stepped over. And it hurt. And I felt like I had no authority. I felt like I had no say. And it wasn't until I made the conscious decision after doing some study in Stoicism was, look, nothing happens to me that isn't my responsibility. Okay, and so if I allow something in ministry to happen, or if something in ministry happens, it's because I allowed it to happen. Okay, now you can take that too far and say I am solely in charge of my ministry. I'm not saying that. God is the wind that blows our sails. Okay, but when it comes to the finance committee saying we're not going to give you this, even though I budgeted for it. When it comes to, we want to use this software, even though I believe that this other software is the right one to pick. Or if it comes to, we're not going to invest in that, we're going to do this instead. Okay? I'm going to fight that until it is my decision to let it go. Okay? And sometimes that means that projects don't turn out the way I did. Sometimes it means that there's compromises, but again, those are my decision. Or sometimes it means that I fight until like this is a life or death, like do or die moment in my ministry. And if I truly believe 100% that is the right thing to do, I fight for it. And so understanding that I'm never going to bend the knee unless it's my desire, meaning like I'm never going to do something unless I deem it like something I want to do. This also includes things in my own spiritual life. The things that I kill, I'm going to bend the knee to God and take that and surrender, essentially. Okay. And if I do surrender something in ministry, if I do say like, okay, I want to do this, but we're going to do it your way. Okay. It is my desire to bend the knee. And I think if you have that approach, there's so many people that are burning out in ministry because they're making constant fights and they're feeling like they're constantly being defeated. And if you change that to I'm constantly being defeated to I am choosing this moment to retreat, to step down, to bend the knee, there's a mindset shift that happens there that keeps you going in ministry, that fuels you in a way where you used to be demotivated. I hope that makes sense. I could do a whole thing on that. But again, that's just my personal experience, and I don't know if that helps you. I certainly do believe it'll help a lot of church leaders in 2024 that are facing burnout. And by the way, I'm going to speak a little bit about burnout at the end because, again, I'm not an expert. I can only share what I see. And I have a pretty powerful thing that it just fuels my heart and can't help but that's burnout. It doesn't exist. Okay. Number 5, listen over speaking. Okay. This one's pretty obvious. I think a lot of people don't realize how much they do this. And I'm showing my mic is clipping, so hopefully I'm not clipping too much in the recording here. So listen over speaking. I have 2 problems. Okay. Number 1, I talk too much. Number 2, says the guy on the podcast. But number 2, I fall into that trap often where instead of listening to what someone's saying, I'm just waiting for my turn to talk, right? And you and I both know, pastor, church leader, what it's like to be on the other end of that conversation. And what's the point? You just want to talk, but you're just giving me time to talk, but you're not really listening to me. So always listen over speaking. This might come from my observational, what do they call it? Myers-Briggs, I think is what it was. I took a test and they're like, you're an observer. Yeah, I'm the quiet guy. I try to be the quiet guy in the group because I want to listen to what everyone says. I try to be as impartial as possible and as objective as possible. And to do that, I have to listen. And sometimes that means that I have to listen to stuff that I think is stupid and that I hate, but I want to hear where this person's coming from. I want to hear what they're thinking. And then I'm going to take a little bit of time to listen to God before I respond. So listen over speaking. Really changed the way that I parent as well. Number 6, this one's obvious to a lot of people. Make the process enjoyable. As you can see, I'm in the process of redecorating my office studio, and I've got a new poster here of a new superhero. I've got Iron Man here because these 2 guys don't have superpowers, but they live in a world of superpowers, and so they have risen up and made themselves superheroes instead of relying on an accident or a gene mutation to make them super powerful. I've got Astro's gear here. I've got an Iron Man figure here. I've got pictures of my dog. And then I've got a Marvel chair. I sit in an Iron Man Marvel chair. Why? Because if I'm going to be in this stinking room for 8 hours a day or however, actually it's probably more like 6 nowadays, I want to enjoy that time. I got really good speakers here on my desk because while I'm working, I'm listening to music because I want to enjoy my time. When I'm doing the dishes, I got my AirPod in listening to a podcast because I want to enjoy my time. Okay? I want to enjoy things if I have to do them. Okay? There is a time to suffer through tasks. I don't think that time is every time. Okay? So you'll often see me walking around with my AirPod in because if I got to go grocery shopping, I'm going to be laughing while I do it, listening to a comedy show or If I'm going to be learning something, I'm going to have I'm going to wear a shirt that brings me joy, right? If you're going to endure something, endure it, make it something that makes you like happy to endure it. Like I said, there are times to grind through things, but again, enjoy it. Find a way to enjoy it while you have to suffer through it. Number 7, always be changing. I bounce this a lot, always be iterating, always be improving. Look, always be changing. I actually got that line from House of Cards, and it just stuck with me. If you're not improving, if you're not constantly changing, you're going to be stuck where you are. Would you rather be better off than you were yesterday? So because of that, we're always changing, we're always improving. We're always looking at what do we got going on, what do we need. Now, if you ever have ever sat down with your core values, even from a business or organizational church standpoint, it gets very frustrating when your actions don't align with those values. And I would say not even half, a little bit of creating these values is when I don't align with these values, when my actions don't align with this, it's frustrating. It's almost like a conviction, almost like when you sin and you feel bad for it, and it's like, well, that's the conviction of the Holy Spirit. Well, that's my own conviction. If my actions don't align with my values, I feel bad about it. And so this is one of those things where it's like, when you feel frustrated, it's because you have a misalignment of what you're doing versus what you value. And if you do what you value, you'll have less of that frustration, which again goes back to the whole don't kneel unless it's my desire. Well, that's my value. So when I do kneel, I don't feel bad about it because it was my decision and that's my value. Okay. 3 more, focus on solutions over problems. This is just stop complaining. I made a notepad actually this week to note down every time I complain. And I've only written one so far, but it's also only Tuesday. Because I want to focus on solutions. Things are hard. I'm sore. I'm tired. My wife is working. There's too much to do. My daughter had a recital and 2 soccer games and a sleepover. My wife was working and I had to take care of all that by myself. It was exhausting. But I try not to complain. I try to focus on what are the solutions. We're going to plan to be 30 minutes early to everything. We're going to make sure everything is packed and ready to go the night before. And I just like, okay, what are the solutions? We're not going to complain. We're going to find solutions. My team knows this as well. If we notice something is wrong, we're not going to say, oh, this guy never gets back to me. This guy still hasn't replied to our 3rd email, okay? Instead, it's, I've sent 3 emails to this client. He has not called me back. What should we do next? Okay, it should always be solution-based, not just let's just sit on the problems. Next is double down on strengths. All right, this one I've had as a value for a long time. I never called it a core value, but double down on strengths. Do what you're good at. Stop trying to get better at what you're not. Everyone's good at some things. Not everyone's good. I'm not going to sit here and try to practice prophesying. That's not my gift. Instead, I'm going to double down. My wife won't believe me when I tell her every spiritual gift inventory I take, say administration is a spiritual gift of mine. I don't even believe it as well. But I'm going to double down on making that better than try to become good at something that I'm not called to be good at, so to speak. So double down on strengths. What's working? Make it work harder, right? Imagine I don't know why my watch keeps vibrating and I don't know what it is because it's on silent or it's on focus mode. If you're not good at tech, don't sit down and try to get good at tech. Find someone, and if you're, by the way, if you're like good at making friends, go make a friend with a tech person, right? I'm not good at science. So my wife handles all of our daughter's science projects and math projects. We are both not good at teaching. So we rely on our daughter and son's private school to teach them and raise them. What I am good at is obviously playing with the kids. I'm good at disciplining them. I'm good at keeping them focused. I'm also good at finding fun and creative ways to have fun at home. And so that's one of the things we're good at. And obviously, I'm good at marketing. So I do this rather than what I'd rather be doing, which is like food pantry ministry or kids ministry even. Like, I wish that was my calling, but this is my calling, so I'm going to double down on it. The way I doubled down on it was I quit my job and started this business. And the last one is a really tough one, especially for creatives. And especially for some reason churches. Do what works even when it's boring. Okay? This used to say do what works even when it doesn't feel good. But I think boring is something that's a little bit more apt because sometimes things don't feel good because they are boring. I think too often in church, especially, we want to change something just because we're bored of it. But the fact is, it's working. Your sign is bringing people to church. Don't change it if it's working, okay? Change it if it's outdated or just not useful, okay? This show, right? I'm bored of doing this show. I'll be honest, sometimes Monday comes around, I'm like, oh, I got the show tomorrow. But it's working. Most calls that I get that are new inquiries are because they saw our show or they listened to it or a friend shared the podcast to them. So I do it, right? 65 episodes in, I'm bored of this, but I do it anyways. I am bored of using the same kind of framework, even though we customize it for our clients, but we have a general framework that we follow for websites. It works, right? Someone described it to me as, you don't build a better mousetrap. You don't build a different mousetrap if you got one that's catching mice. Sounds kind of crass after following church website, but if you got something that's working, again, double down on it, but don't do it. Just keep it going. And so many people are like, oh, we changed our logo 3 years ago, so it's time for something new. We've got a new mission statement because our last one was a couple years old. Like, if it's working, don't change it, right? If it's not working, change it. Always be changing. Double down on your strengths. But too often, pastors sit there and like, Sunday's so boring. Yeah, but if it's bringing in people, if people are getting saved, like, that's not boring. That's exciting. Keep doing it. It's working. So don't make changes just for change's sake. All right, a lot of churches are like, every 3 months we change our announcements. We change our welcome. Why? It's hard to be welcomed if things are constantly changing. I need to know what to expect, okay? The business world knows this, okay? The Coke can changes once every 30 years, all right? Nike has never changed its logo because it's recognizable and it works, all right? So do what works even when it doesn't feel good. Those are my 10 core values. Family first, follow me until you see Jesus, commit now, figure out the rest later. Don't bend the knee unless it's my desire. Listen over speaking, enjoy the process, always be changing, solutions over problems, double down on strengths, and do what works even when it hurts, all right? Now a quick note on burnout. And yes, this is a little bit of a shorter episode. Quick word on burnout. The definition that I see burnout as, and I'll give you an illustration that was given to me that was like, yeah, that makes sense, okay? Burnout is when the outcome is no longer worth the work it takes to get to it, okay? It's when the process becomes more painful than the outcome's benefit, all right? And here's the example, okay? And I hope I don't get struck on YouTube for saying this. I'll tiptoe around it. If there was a penny across the street, I would not cross the highway. Let's call it a highway, okay? I-45 in Houston. If there was $100 across I-45 in Houston, I would not cross that road to get $100. If there was $100 and I knew like I had the right to it, across my street, I would cross my street to get $100. I wouldn't cross it for a penny. You see, the actions we take, we're only willing to take actions based on what the end outcome is, okay? Now again, what's it gonna take for me to cross I-45? I think $1 million, I don't even think that's enough. In fact, I don't think there's an amount of money that I would cross a busy traffic for. But if my wife was across I-45 and a man was harming her, you bet I would cross I-45 to get to her. So burnout is when the effort required is more painful than the outcome that is a result. And here's the hard truth. What a lot of people call ministry burnout is when the work of ministry is no longer worth the outcome of that ministry, which results in two things, really two options. Either the work of ministry has become more daunting and painful than the outcome it produces, meaning you're grinding and spinning your wheels, but there's not really anything happening. Or you're allowing the work of ministry to be more painful than the ministry's success as an outcome. because you're overworking yourself, because you're slaving yourself to someone else's wishes rather than God's wishes and your convictions. And because of that, you're constantly being stepped on, you're constantly being overworked, you're constantly stressed, you're anxious, you're depressed about your job in ministry. And even though God is blessing it, you're allowing the work to overshadow that, and you're burning out, and you don't want to get back into it because you're afraid that difficulty is going to come back. And I'm not saying that's a bad feeling. I'm saying let's call it what it is. It's not overworking to the point where you're burnt out. Burnout, literally, a candle burns out when it has no wax left. Our ministry burns out when our life is over. As long as there is wax and the wick, the candle can burn. And as long as you have breath, you should be in ministry. And so what we call burnout is not literal burnout. It's we've allowed the work to overshadow the ministry outcome. And so by keeping these values, in my experience, and I hope in your experience, by keeping your own personal core values, the work of ministry will never override the outcome because you're living out your values. If you're living out your values, your actions are matching your values, you will find joy, really. God's joy, Christ's joy, joy in Christ. But it's because your actions are aligned with your values. If you have a set of values and your actions, especially your ministry actions, are not aligned with those, you're going to burn out. But it's not burning out, so to speak, because you still got some wax left in your candle. You're just allowing the effort to be more painful than the result, okay? And again, I know that is not an easy thing to hear, and I fully expect people to disagree with me in the comments. I hope that made sense, though, and I appreciate you for at least listening to this definition. Understanding that burnout for me is, my understanding that burnout is the work of ministry being more painful than the outcome, then creating values and living those values in ministry completely eliminates the possibility of burnout. Because if I'm not getting enough family time because ministry is getting in the way, guess what? I go back to core value number 1, family first. If I let the work of ministry get in the way of my spiritual life, that's not going to happen because core value number 2. If I'm constantly grinding my gears, trying to get ministry going, and I have no results to show for it, and I look at that, I'm like, why am I even doing this? That doesn't happen because of core value number 3, I've committed, and now I've got to figure it out. If I won't feel like I'm constantly being trampled on and constantly being enslaved to the ministry, not enslaved to Christ, I'm saying enslaved to the work of ministry, that's not going to happen because I've made a decision not to bend the knee unless it's my desire. Okay? I'm never going to, again, grind away in work that's not worth doing because I'm not listening, I'm not changing, I'm not focused on solutions, I'm not doubling down on strengths. That's not going to happen because of those other core values that basically are the opposite. Always be changing, solutions over problems, double down on strengths, listen over speaking. All right? I'm never just going to get bored of the process because I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to sit in my Ironman chair. I drive an Ironman car, okay? I drive a special edition Ironman car. Because if I'm going to drive, if I'm going to take my kids to and from daycare, if I'm going to drive to business conferences and stuff like that, I'm going to enjoy the process and be in a really cool car while I do it. And then even when I'm bored, and it's like, this isn't even worth it anymore because I'm so bored out of my mind, I'm going to do it anyways. And that's going to make the result worth it because I know what boring works. Okay, so this is how I stay focused in ministry. This is how I do. I think this is, if you ever like, Justin, how do you do all this stuff? How are you always posting on social media and taking face-to-face calls and still doing sales? I totally intend to get out of that one day and have someone do it. But in the meantime, I'm gonna stick forward with these values, and it's gonna help me do work. And I don't see burnout anywhere on the horizon. Because I'm doing what's boring, because that's a value. I'm always changing, because that's a value. I'm always focused on strengths, because that's a value. I'm not going to sacrifice my family, because that's a value. I'm going to follow Jesus. And hopefully you see Jesus in the actions that I do, because that's a value. So all that said, if you want some homework, take an index card and write down 3 to 10 values. Repeat it to yourself every day. Memorize it. Focus on it. and over time, I think it internalizes itself to where it becomes second nature. And I very stubbornly either say, no, I'm not going to do that, or I'll surrender that to you. Yeah, let's do it that way, so to speak. Okay. Thank you guys for watching. Again, I know this was a little bit of a different podcast, but if you want to be, it was a little bit of a different episode, but if you want to be relentless in your execution, if you want to be unreasonable in your actions, and you want to be outrageous in your thinking, yeah, you need to have some values to drive the decisions that drive the direction of your ministry and of your life. And to ultimately protect yourself from burnout, you got to have these values in place and follow them to a T. So again, this is a little bit of an ancillary to what we normally talk about, but I felt heavy to share it. So we'll be back next week talking about the follow-up process that we use when someone connects with your church ahead of time, and some of the things that you should say, and some of the things that you can do to communicate who you are ahead of time to make sure that someone has a great first impression of your church even before they step foot in your building. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, leave a review and all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next week.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the Best Known Church Show with Justin Nava. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest news, strategies, and resources that you need to reach 10x more people and become the best known in your community. To send us a message or leave a voicemail for Justin to be played on a future show, visit thebestknownchurchshow.com. And if you'd like to work with us so you can focus on your ministry, give us a call at 832-861-7654. Until next time, stay outrageous, unreasonable, and relentless.